quite a few years ago. I wrote an article for the Debrief in November 2023, which was headlined something provocative like, "Why is the UK so far behind with UAP policy?" And it seemed unwise, as I say, for the desk officer who's responsible for this topic, and there's always somebody responsible for something somewhere in the UK government machine, not to have moved on the lines to take in the briefing since 2009, when Sir Bob Ainsworth closed down the UFO desk, in inverted commas, because I don't think there ever really was such a thing, and said that they don't look at this topic anymore because, get this, in more than 50 years, the Ministry of Defence has found no military threat from UFOs, extraterrestrials, insert suitable noun at the end of it, no military threat. And it's as absurd as, a bedtime story. The little girl's just finished having her father read the next chapter of Harry Potter, and she turns to her father and she says, Daddy, is Harry Potter real? And the father answers, in more than 50 years, the Ministry of Defence has found no threat from Harry Potter. And the little girl turns to her mother and says, Mummy, Daddy's gone a bit funny again, hasn't he? And mother goes, yes, he has. And the Ministry of Defence, in the nicest possible way, has gone a bit funny on this, because it is not an astute thing to do when over the other side of the pond, there is clearly a lot of political momentum. Schumer rounds amendments, the task force, the setting up of a special unit within the Department of Defence, not to have moved on from that, not to create any legitimacy, any sort of Overton window that allows even the scintilla of a conversation about this. So we write letters, we send emails in the UK to various politicians and other stakeholders. With almost no exceptions, we get nothing back, not even a reply, because it's just too difficult. No UAPs, please, we're British is kind of the thing. And it's broadly that case, that way, Carmen, across Europe. UAP Netherlands have done some great work. They've got a conversations that they've had with their government. And about a couple of years ago, there was a hearing, not a sort of formal hearing, but a hearing within the chamber, or one of the rooms anyway, within the EU Parliament building. But that didn't really move forward either. So the US is blazing a trail, and other allies, including Five Eyes allies, are nowhere. And so that means the level of shock, the dissonance between what citizens think the position is and what the position might turn out to be. And we've got no...
Would be higher.
It's higher. That's exactly right. And that's unnecessary, and it potentially causes more harm.
Well, and the ontological shock piece almost becomes, so there's one, I guess, what am I saying? There's one fear of ontological shock, and we should define that, actually, before I even say what I'm saying. So can you define, I know that you said words about it before, but can you define it again in super clear language so it doesn't sound, like a scholarly thing? What is it?
Well,
insinuating scholars aren't clear? Where is this idea coming from?
I know, I'm full of crazy ideas.
So the obverse of ontological shock is ontological security, which is what we as humans tend to need to carry out our daily lives in a psychologically secure way, that the frame of reference for the universe and the people around us and our relationships are relatively stable. Yeah. So the ontological shock is when there is a significant change to that worldview. Yeah. And the shock is not just that particular thing is not as you thought it was going to be, but it erodes one's confidence in all the other things that we've been taught since we were little about the way the world is. The most visual example to define what ontological shock might be is that famous scene at the very end of the first Planet of the Apes movies. Yeah, where Charlton Heston thinks he's on a far distant planet that he sailed to in his spaceship, but when he sees the Statue of Liberty, goes down on his knees on the beach, and that's the ontological shock, because it's not what he thought, and it's got massive implications for him and what's happened and his relationship with the universe. That's the best example I can come up with.
So I really feel like the ontological shock is a problem that's not on the radar. Like as you've just said, we know that it's not on the radar of the UK, and I don't think it's that much on the radar of the US public health or public service folks either. But I also think that when it's not on the radar and there's no way to deal with, by the way, maybe we're not sure that reality works the way we thought it was. What can happen is, even without having any ontological shock, without any revelations of aliens or spacecraft or walking through walls or whatever it is, you can end up in a state of cognitive infrastructure collapse, by which I mean, in a non-scholarly way, people anyway decide that there's something going on that's a big conspiracy against them. They sense that there's something that they don't know, and they decide someone else actually knows it, and that it's a big conspiracy against them, rather than what it is that people are hiding is that they don't understand a lot of shit, and that the universe doesn't work the way we thought it was. And they think it makes people safer to hide that. But in fact, it makes people collapse because they can sense it. You see what I'm saying?
I do. And I think you're absolutely right to focus on the consequences, and it's the perception of the individual that matters, less than necessarily exactly the nature of the reality of what's causing that. In other words, you can suffer something like ontological shock, even if the external trigger turns out not to be true.